All right, episode 30 with Ryan Joyce. Ryan's a fantastic magician, illusionist, hypnotist. He kind of does it all. Great entertainer. He's traveled all over the world performing, and we had a great conversation. I know you're going to really enjoy this one. Sit back and relax. Here's Ryan Joyce. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're here with Ryan Joyce.
Nice to see you, Darren. Gosh, we've crossed paths over the years many times.
Yeah, last time I seen you was on a ship.
That's right. That's
we were
right.
Cruising. And,
Barbados, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was all of a sudden we just saw you.
It was a big surprise.
And you just did the same thing with my brother Brad. You just saw him in
that's right.
with San Juan, wasn't it? You just
it was
crossing the street and there he was.
Yeah, it was a cacophony of errors for my travel day that I ended up in San Juan. I wasn't even supposed to be there. You know, I was flying to Houston, and all those flights got canceled. So it was, I mean, your roll of the dice. You can't even believe that would happen. And sure enough, walking down the street at 10 o'clock trying to find food, you know what it's like when you travel for a living. And I just randomly look up, and there's Bradley walking down the street. My, visceral Bradley, and he was there with the whole group. So it was great. It's great. The family's been, your whole family. I've crossed paths over the years. One of the first shows I ever did in Brantford Sanderson Center was with your
at
family.
a Christmas show.
Yeah.
This will be year 19 for us doing the Christmas show there. So it's going to be 20 pretty soon. But
wow,
that's
I'll
pretty cool.
never forget, because I had a panic moment with that show. As a magician, we rely a lot of technology for seamlessly making our shows possible. So I have a whole computer that runs all the audio effects that I can control from my pocket. I can also tether that with the lighting and such. But and sure enough, I don't know what it was, whether the belt pack from the team, the batteries died or whatnot. But I press play and there's no music whatsoever. And this is the first day with you guys that we just met. I walk out to that, but I'm used to that. We always have stuff go wrong.
Yeah,
and it's how you.
And
deal
it always
with
seems dramatic for you,
right?
But the audience doesn't even know there was supposed to be something there anyway. So
not a thing.
They can throw you.
And except in some cases with magicians, they'll know if it's really bad. They'll know if you have a really big mistake. But thankfully, over the years, I haven't had anything too dramatic that that throws you off guard or looks really bad. But there's been a couple. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. So, what would you title yourself? I know there's in your land of what you do. There's kind of different, titles. But what would you explain?
Yeah. What is the job?
Yeah.
Well, there's no real battle in my mind about magician, illusionist, entertainer. I all fall under all of the same basket. Yeah. A magician technically it covers the full spectrum, and an illusionist would represent someone who does the bigger scale stuff. So I've danced in both of those worlds. When I was on Penn and Teller's Foolish, I would have technically classified as an illusionist, but it doesn't. It's all semantic. None of that means anything to anybody. I also, I wear a lot of top hats, to be honest with you. I'm also in the filmmaking side of it for a passion, not for profession, but and producing as well, where we've filmed a show we're trying to sell. And of course, in the industry, there's lots of struggles. So, it's ups and downs. I'm just starting that career. So filmmaking is a separate side of it. Over 8 million views on YouTube, a handful of videos gone viral, which is kind of unique and fun to experience real time. That's a little different. But I if I were to internally classify myself, I just sort of say a visual storyteller. I really like telling stories, whether it's through magic or filmmaking, or I also do a hypnosis show, comedy hypnosis show. So whatever it is it takes to connect with a group of people, it really gets me going.
So let's go back. I always like to go back and sort of figure out where everyone came from. And so are you Ontario born?
I am Hamilton, Ontario, born and raised. I was born in St. Joseph's, very complicated, almost, died at birth kind of thing. Everything's got to be over exaggerated. Yeah, jaundice, real bad, and complications. I have eye problems. I only see out of one eye at a time. Real unusual start to a visual industry, but I feel like those little setbacks made it more enjoyable or at least more of a challenge. I've always been a guy that likes challenge. I'm always doing 25 things at the same time.
Yeah.
So I
hear you.
Got to keep busy. And so I started, I was exposed to magic early on as a kid. I could tell you, of course, it was probably a magic kid or something that got the spark. But my earliest memories involve thinking in magical ways. I remember being in junior kindergarten. That was something we had in Ontario at a time, and just making the little rubbers, the pencil erasers disappear. And in my mind, it would have been magical, but as a kid, it would have been just the dumbest thing possible. But that was the beginning for me, and my parents sort of nurtured that kind of environment. They bought me a magic kit for Christmas, and I did my first show, for the family, right, at New Year's, and that became a little bit of a family tradition.
What did you do in the first show? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I have footage of it, so that can be bribe material. There was a top hat and a cape involved, and a magic wand. Yeah. It was a Houdini magic kit that you would get at Toys R Us. Like, it wasn't. We're not talking world class anything.
No.
At this point, and my brother was in the show, and all my family members watched it, and that was the beginning, and the beginning of the end, I guess. And then I've never done magic my full-time career. Like, I've never had a real job, like this. I view it as a lot of luck, of course, but opportunities where luck meets hard work, and those both have collided. But man, there's a lot of luck in this industry.
Yeah, there certainly is. So you did your first, little show in front of your parents and all that. And so where do you go? I mean, I understand where you go as a musician or that type of thing, but in that land where, it's not as if there's a magic teacher and around the corner, you can't go take piano lessons and magic.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So where do you go to learn the craft? How do you take the first next step from picking up a magic kit?
I was really fortunate my family relocated to a community called Fergus, Ontario, which is just north of Guelph. Fergus Lower has become quite a tourist area. At that time, it wasn't known for what it is today, but now it's got like a hotbed of magicians just happen to be in this area. It's just super crazy how life drops those little baskets in front of your door.
Yeah.
And so I relocate there with my family, and sure enough, in the newspaper, probably within a couple months of us being there, my mom reads an article about a local magician, a kid, 14, 15, that won in a competition, a magic competition. And so that led me down the doorway to what professional magician organizations exist in the world, and that sort of underlining organization structure. And so there's monthly meetings, scattered throughout Canada and the U.S. and around the world that are all part of a larger organization, like Kinsman's Club and Lions Clubs and such. It's the same. It's like a social club, I guess, for magicians. So I started going to those. My mom would take me. She had to join as well, because I was so young. And that opened the floodgates completely. I can't even believe the people that I met in that club. That's why it's so fortunate. One of the most influential women in magic comes from Elora, Ontario. And she started the Canadian Association of Magicians, which is the largest organization for magicians that exists. And it was single-handedly because of her allowed Canadians to compete in what would be classified as the Olympics of magic. We have all that same structure that you would expect anywhere else, so the FISM is what it's called, and so this Olympics happens every 3 years, and it's never ever come to North America. It's always in Asia or Europe, and because of her and another lady that runs a huge magic festival in Quebec, not only is the Olympics coming to North America for the first time, but it's coming to Quebec City in Canada. Oh, wow. So it's really a huge deal. This will draw 8,000 to 12,000 people. It's going to be a huge event. So it's exciting things, and so that I call that lady Joan is her name, but I call her my second mom because that's how close we are as through the years. She's been a mom to me. So really incredible foundation there, and from there met all sorts of other people that started this long career in entertainment. It's been quite a journey, that's for sure.
So when did you figure you did your kind of first real show.
Right.
Yeah.
From transitioning from like interest to like profession phase,
Yeah.
that kind of phase. Yeah. I had convinced the high school to give me $8,000. I was a member of the student council and the drama executive, and I approached each of them separately and basically petitioned for money.
Yeah.
And they agreed, and so we put on a show as the last year or the last kind of big event, theater event for the school. So I managed to convince the school to fund basically an illusion show that I built and produced, and we teched, and it was a mediocre success at best, right? Like it was high school, so it can't be that great. But if I hadn't lucked out and made all those arrangements, I wouldn't be sitting here. And so that without a doubt, I point to that as one of the most fundamental changes that occurred is that one show. If I hadn't done that, and the media after that, we got an opportunity. A gentleman saw us, and he is a hypnotist and was touring Canada. He was also a promoter, and he saw the show and offered us 10 weeks on the road.
Nice.
And and that 10 weeks turned into 13 years, which grew into 135 live ticketed events from coast to coast, raised over $2 million for charities. Just seeing every stretch of this beautiful country.
Yeah.
You name a city, over 15,000 people, and I played it.
Yeah. Me too.
You too. Yep.
It's very rare that you run into places.
What's your favorite?
Yeah.
What's your, like, when people ask you what your favorite place is in Canada, where do you tell them?
Kelowna.
Oh my gosh, we're in the same province, at least for our favorites. Okay, Kelowna. Yeah. What about Kelowna makes?
It's really the only place I figure I could move to.
Yeah.
I kind of judge it on that.
Yeah.
Because I live here.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the whole Okanagan Valley area.
Stunning.
Yeah. Penticton and all that.
Yep.
The wine's great.
Yep. Yes.
But it's just, I just really like it there. When we tour, we quite often will go to Kelowna and perform at the theater there. And we'll almost always try to make it, a day off or 2 days off.
Yep.
So we can just hang out.
Totally. We always booked in the Osoyoos. We never played Kelowna on a regular, but we played Penticton every year, and we always booked a day before or a day after so we could, enjoy the
Yeah, and I haven't really even explored it nearly as much as I should. And because you're still in there and you end up going to the regular things. We're always a little more extravagant when we go there. We stay at the Delta Okanagan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right in the venue's almost across the street.
Sweet.
And there's a Cactus Club walking distance. And,
that's great.
Everything's on the water. It's beautiful. But I remember one thing distinctly. I'd done a trip with the family. We had done a riverboat cruise through France. And you did that trip and you're like, wow, this place is stunning. Like you just kind of in awe how the history and the views and everything. And so came home and almost directly went to tour. And I think one of the first stops was Kelowna. And I think going to Penticton. So I remember the drive from Kelowna to Penticton, and I went early to get set up and get ready for the show before everyone else got there. Yeah. And I'm driving myself, and I just looking around. It just happened to be one of those days. The sun was perfect. Everything was, green and lush and
windows open.
Yeah, and it was just like, I like this better than France.
Yeah.
Like I was blown away. And then I go back to my own country.
Yeah.
And we have something that I think was even better.
Yeah.
And it was one of those times where just like, yeah, this is special.
It's so true.
Yeah, this whole area. So, I mean, there's a lot of great places. I like the East a lot.
Yes, agreed.
But I don't think I could live in the East. It's just not enough.
It's a winter thing.
Yeah. But I love going there. Some of my favorite restaurants are out there.
Agreed.
And there's...
I was so glad Cora's moved out towards Ontario.
Yeah,
because Cora's was always out east, east in the Quebec area, and it moved. And same with the restaurants out west. Cactus Club you mentioned, was still mainly out west, but Earl's and the Moxies
and all that,
and
stuff
they migrated over here. They were great.
And I always thought that was amazing because those restaurants seemed so like you would think they were Ontario-based restaurants.
Absolutely.
They were hip and they're cool and
Agreed. It felt like a totally different world. Like there was all these brands that you see that you maybe like when you go to the States, you know, and all the road signs are slightly different and colors are different.
Yeah.
You think, oh, this feels foreign. I remember the first time traveling out west, very first time, and just a lot of it felt very foreign and very different, but still very Canadian. You know, we're the nicest people on the planet.
yeah.
From
Well, I
coast to
think so.
coast.
I mean, there isn't really anywhere in Canada I don't like.
Yeah.
Have
you been to the territories? And
a little bit?
I haven't been to Iqaluit.
Yeah, no,
or
I've been up.
Whitehorse.
There's a few up there that I'd like to do, but been to Newfoundland a bunch of times too, and all over.
Gross
multiple
Morin
times.
is one of the most beautiful spots.
Yeah,
Provincial parks in Canada. It's just stunning. Gross Morin National Park. My favorite place in BC while in Canada, when people ask, I say Nelson.
yeah,
Nelson, BC is incredible, and we stumbled into it. We booked it randomly. It looked like an appropriate size market for us, so we tried it out. We never did financially amazing there, but we booked it because it was just such an experience. It just 20 minutes down the road, there's this Ainsworth Hot Springs. It's like a hot springs carved out of the side of the mountain by Mother Nature, right? So you're inside this little cave, and there's people moaning and chanting, and there's a polar dip out there. And in all of the years touring, which we did 13 total across Canada at least, the most terrifying experience I ever had was outside of BC. There's Kokanee Mountain, as in Kokanee from the beer. And right off the side of the road, it says, climb Kokanee Mountain. Well, we're traveling with a 16-passenger vehicle on a 17 or 20-foot trailer. I can't remember at this point. It's long since gone. We unhooked the trailer and decided, let's go try this Coke. Little did we know that this was going to wheel down to a one laneway of just dirt road straight up this mountain that must have been like 14% grade.
Yeah.
And at some point, there's another car, and this is like a full diesel. I swear to God, my fists were so clenched on that steering wheel, but we got to the top and it was like totally dark. We expected to take like maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the whole experience took 2.5 hours, and we were just terrified. I couldn't imagine, that's what we were going to face. We thought this was just like a paved road. We were those tourists,
Yeah.
We were those guys.
yeah. I've had a couple of those. I was on the road with my friend Jim Witter, who I did my very first podcast with, and we were touring somewhere in the U.S. But this was early GPS days, so I think I had I'm not even sure if I had a Garmin at that point. It could have been a Palm Pilot that had a GPS. I had the very first GPS units that you could ever throw together.
Yeah.
Anyways, they weren't great. So we came into town, we'd done the show, and we were driving out through the night, I think traveling back home or something. Anyways, it was just a minivan and a trailer. And I was driving. So I head out, and GPS took me a different way out. And I say, okay, that looks good. And we kind of switch backing up a little bit and bit. And then we get up and come up over this hill. And I look down, and it's like, holy crap, that's a big hill. I was like, all right, start taking it easy. And it's been snowing a bit too.
Oh.
So I start, going down, and it's dark. You don't realize how far this hill goes down. And I wouldn't even call it a hill. It was a small mountain of some sort.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I start rolling down this hill with the trailer.
The weight behind you.
And, the van's full of guys and everything. And I could just feel the brakes just getting softer and softer.
Oh, boy.
And softer. And the same thing, you're clutching, and I instantly pouring sweat.
Yep.
Just instantly.
Yep.
And I'm not really saying anything to anybody. I think Jim was up front with me, and I think he had an idea it wasn't going well.
Right.
And I'm just trying to, apply brake,
Right.
let it off.
Dropped her down to 1 or 2.
I couldn't even at that point because
too
I was
fast.
going too fast.
Yeah.
And by the time we got down to the bottom, there was basically no brake left. It was,
Oh, my God.
it was just not, I wasn't really doing anything. And luckily it kind of went down and kind of came back up a little bit. So it was able to slow the vehicle, and I was able to establish, brakes again. But it's just one of those things you don't expect. It comes out of nowhere.
Yep.
And It's really scary. Yeah.
I'm sure we both have a
Ton of
like
those.
we might be opening the floodgates here. But we had kind of the similar, but the inverted version of that on the Coquihalla going north up to Kamloops, that route. So we're down at the bottom of the valley. There's no snow. It's rain, and then all of a sudden you drive uphill for 5 or so minutes, and then boom, that's no longer that light rain. It's intense snow, and there was an accident. They had to shut the highway down. So with a trailer with all that weight, like we were towing a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Foot on the brake. We're going backwards. Like I'm not able to stop. And so the cops, thankfully, they had their cruiser there and one of those SUV things, and they put it behind and like locked it. And then when it was time to go, we could like. We couldn't get, so they were helping push, and and the posi traction in the van is shifting it over to the. Oh God, it was just, you don't want to relive those days. And we hit one time with the trailer just outside of I can't believe I remember these. Davidson, Saskatchewan, population 20 probably. Yeah, it's in between. Well, the only two cities in Saskatchewan, Regina and Saskatoon, and we hit black ice with the truck and trailer. 110 is the legal limit there, and we. 180 degrees, and the words that came out of my mouth, brace for impact.
Yeah.
That was it. And sure enough, we hit, and we were fine, but...
Yeah, they're scary moments.
Mm-hmm.
A while ago, a lot of the shows we've been touring with, a few guys, and we're just renting a couple of vehicles. And you used to be able to rent like 12-passenger vans and that type of thing, and they changed the laws. You can't rent those things anymore without a commercial license and all this stuff. So you end up with minivans. And it got to a point where we finally said, you know what? We're never going to rent minivans again. And it would just always, it's a premium SUV. It's all-wheel drive. And the odd place you can't get it because they're hard to get some places. But it's almost always, it's like, yep. We were stuck too on a out east on a tour, and it's the only stop we had that was only 2 days. It said, and there was no minivans available from Moncton, and from Moncton to Fredericton, and Fredericton back the same night. And so, actually, no, it was Fredericton, and then we had to get back to Halifax Airport to fly to Newfoundland the next day for a big show. And so they were calling for bad weather, so we left Fredericton after the show, and it's ice, just pure ice. And then it just switches over the snow. And it was so deep on the highway. There was nobody on the highway. There's literally one transport truck had gone through, and it was probably a foot to 2 feet of snow on the highway. You can't, and it's dark, it's snowing. And luckily for that, the grooves just from the transport truck, that's the only thing I followed. And the minivan was bottoming out.
Oh my gosh.
We're scraping
with snow
because it was so deep. And we had to get back to Halifax. So we got into Moncton, and then eventually it turned back to freezing rain again. And then it turned to rain, and then it turned to torrential rain. Wow. Like you going down the hills there and you hit the bottom, and it's like a foot of water at the bottom of these little gullies.
That's nuts.
You hit those. So yeah, by the time we got to the Halifax airport, my hands, hurt for days.
Yeah.
It was clenching for 8 hours.
Yep.
It ended up being an 8-hour drive, and you just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You went to sleep for 2 hours and got up and flew to
Yeah. Well, then have you ever missed? I've come close twice. Have you ever missed a show?
I'm trying to think what we have. I don't think we have.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I know. I've come close twice. So one was Alberta somewhere. Gosh, our transmission in the van went, and actually we had to, we literally got there about an hour before showtime, and then it turns out it's a community center, and in that case, because we're a full production, we travel with everything to be able to perform in any environment. So it could be a theater or it could be a community center, but one means a lot more work than the other. Mm-hmm. And so we had to set up all as fast as we could, and it turned out to be just a stand-up show, much what I would do on a cruise ship now. But we made it, and then the other time. was the same reason I got into hypnosis. I had been studying hypnosis under the gentleman that put me on the road, and I had another mentor in the industry. But there's one thing from learning hypnosis to doing it.
Yeah.
And so we were in Brandon, I think it was Brandon, Manitoba, and the truck wasn't going to make it in time at all. I can't remember what the logistics was. It was some technical error. And so that was the day that I knew I had to go on stage, and we did the hypnosis show for the first time.
Yeah.
And like terrifying, right? And it was, again, mediocre success, but it was the foundation from which all that grew. But, we are faced with so many challenges in this industry that are so unique.
Yeah, you have to be able to really adapt quickly.
Yep.
And stay calm, and be able to make it happen.
Yep.
The show must go on. We had several times on tour. We're starting out with Brian Edwards on the Rocklands Entertainment schedule. We're on Tommy Hunter's last final tour, and the first show was in St. John's, Newfoundland. And big show. We're going out a couple of days early. We're going to rehearse at the theater for a couple of days, and then we start the national tour. And I remember taking off from Toronto, and we're getting closer to Newfoundland, and I'm sitting there. And I could just feel all of a sudden I could just feel this banking, and it's just like, that's a little weird because I can't sleep on the plane, so I'm kind of aware of everything.
Me neither, yeah.
And it just feels like, okay, we just made a massive turn, and I think Brian was next to me, and I said to him, I think we're going back, and he just looked at me like, what? Yeah, I think we're going back. And sure enough, the pilot came on a minute later. Yeah, this is the captain speaking. The whole thing. We're weather condition in Newfoundland. We are
not sure what to say here.
Heading back to Toronto.
Yeah,
it's like, oh gosh, we're heading back to Toronto. So we had all the guys. We had like 40 pieces of luggage. So we left. I think that was a Friday night, and the show was Sunday afternoon. So we get back. The next flight's not till Saturday night. Same schedule, just 24 hours later. So rooms, have to try to store all this luggage, and we start all over again. So we take off, and pilot's like, "Yeah, we're not sure if we're going to make it, but we're going to try." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" He says, "Well, the conditions there change quickly. So, but we could get there. So sure enough, we get close, and we just circle for like 2 hours. Wow. And then the captain said, well, I'm going to go for it to see if the weather opens up.
There's words you want to hear your captain say.
If you happen to, we're coming to descend, if you happen to, feel us gun it again, that means we're going to head back, and we're going to actually go to Halifax because we don't have enough fuel to go anywhere else. So sure enough, we 3/4 of the way through the descent, and we're like, oh, we're going to make it. And all of a sudden, and then you just take off, and it's like, oh no. And it's just, he had to abort landing, and we went to Halifax. So same thing, Halifax, it's like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
We get rooms downtown. We go, and we're, trying to figure things out. And Brian is, the shows must go on. That's always,
of course,
we've got to make it. So nothing was going in, but if you're a smaller plane, you can get into Newfoundland easier. So we ended up renting or chartering a Dash 8 out of Halifax just for ourselves. So all of us went in. We landed in Newfoundland. I think it was at 12 o'clock. The show's at 1 or 2.
Oh my.
So I'm advancing with all the guys. I'm in the band, but I'm also advancing the tour technically. And I'm okay. They have our stage spot, so patch everything, get everything ready. Basically we walked in, grabbed our instruments, plugged in, and had a 5-minute sound check possibly. Wow. And then 20 minutes later, we're doing the show for the first time with no rehearsal.
Oh, wow.
No, nothing. And we had a matinee, and I think we had an evening show as well. We did 2 shows. And then that's how we started the tour.
If you woke up knowing what was about to happen, you'd question continuing the day.
Yeah. But, it was one of those things that kind of, we just sucked it up, and I just, and there's some people, I'm not sure if there's anyone in that trip, but I've been on other trips where you just, get people who just don't want to, they just, who cares? you know, just they don't want anything to do with anything, and they just rather just go to bed and not worry about it. But you know, I've always come from the land as if you can make it work, you make it work.
Same.
Because sometimes things are happening miles and hours away from, you know, someone could be sitting in Moncton and it could be nice and sunny out, but it could be snowing like blazes 2 hours away, but they're sitting in sun.
Right.
They don't see that it's not nice somewhere else.
Right.
So you have to kind of push yourself through and make it happen. But it's fun.
I have to agree. You know? I feel the same with that when I'm looking out the stateroom window of a cruise ship and it's 30 degrees and everyone back home is getting 30 centimeters of snow. I feel the opposite.
I know. It's a plus side.
That's true. Well, yeah, what an eclectic mix of stories for sure. Like, the industry is filled with them, and unpredictability is the game.
Yeah, I think as you get older, you try to eliminate the possibilities of things happen. It's like I said, just always rent. Yeah. For us, we rent as good as we can get, the safest vehicle we can possibly get. So if you have to hit bad weather or something, you feel more secure and you have a chance of making it. Yeah. Nothing like being stuck in a minivan with no snow tires when it's a foot of snow.
Right.
But so I want to zip back to when you're learning your craft. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a lot of mystery behind magic, right?
Sure is.
So with the organization you belong to, maybe you can fill us in a little bit. I know a lot of magicians, illusionists, whatever you want to say, they've created their own. Yeah. There's a lot of creating your own thing.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of this is the trick that a lot of people have done. You either put your spin on it or whatever it is, but a lot of it's the same type of thing.
Yep.
Is there like a secret book everyone learns from, or everyone just stays pretty?
The Magic Bible, no. Yes. What, magic is among the only professions you can just buy yourself into.
Yeah,
you technically don't need to have talent to do it, and that's why many people have seen so many bad magicians, and it makes it hard for the rest of us. The learning side of it has certainly changed dramatically with the advent of YouTube, which is essentially just like everything else. It's kind of crumbling the infrastructure of the foundations of magic. A lot of these organizations from which I spoke of earlier, you could classify them as an old gentleman's club, and that generation is very much dying.
Yeah.
As an asterisk to the side, I'd love to chat about this with you because I'd love to hear your perspective. We'll come back to it, but I feel like vaudeville is kind of making a resurgence. I feel like this generation of individuals before us that spent time looking at their Twitter boxes now realize they can come to a little venue with about 300 people and maybe not know the name of the person that's down there performing for them, but they still want to come out and do it. I feel like there's a live entertainment resurgence, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that. As far as the magician structure of it, magic and learning is so accessible now on YouTube. Really, when I was getting into it early on, I was really fortunate that my second mom, as we called her, she made me aware of the University of Magic in New York City, and so there was a scholarship for it, and I applied for it, and I actually got it. Slidini Scholarship Award is what it was called, and it basically gave me free tuition to this University of Magic, and that paved. I mean, it was there that I met some of these incredible people.
Did you meet Harry Potter there?
I did. Yeah. I got a scar, but I can't show you where it is.
Sorry, I just had to say that.
Yeah, Voldemort's a real dink. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
That's
still family friendly.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Mm-hmm. There you go. So there's a very esoteric division of magic as well. There's a lot of the people like myself. I would classify myself as a professional magician that doesn't really stick too much to the pro organization side of it. Like I don't perform at conventions and I don't dabble in those professional organized magician events. But I make my full-time career at this. Yeah. I invent, I create. I have a piece. The one video that's gone most viral is an illusion that I created that was marketed. In fact, somebody else did that illusion on Fool Us. I didn't do my own piece. And so like I am a creator. I have an overactive creativity gland is how I often describe it, because that's why I dabble in so many things, because I just love to create stuff. So for creativity and magic, I have no problem, but a lot of magicians struggle with that side of it. And magic is really just at its core storytelling with a visual, and
so
people fail at that.
Question: when you say you can buy your way into it, explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, there's magic shops all over the place. That a lot of magic can be just technique. A lot of magic can be like almost, I want to say, built-in, self-contained.
Yeah,
and so you can buy those routines, and magicians will also release their full routines.
So it's almost like I guess if you write a play, and you have copyright to that, and if you want to perform that play, you have to pay a copyright to that. So does that work that way? You can license out your illusion that you come up with, or
that kind of thing. It's more of the purchase. The prop has to be purchased, because in the illusion side of it, it's a physical prop, so that the exchange of money happens in the purchase of that prop, and the license is sort of merged in with it. But as far as copyright infringement, it's impossible to enforce it. So we do run into a lot of theft in the industry. A lot of theft. I've had a lot of my stuff stolen as well. Well, I mean, one gentleman literally almost stole my whole show, and from the similar naming and all of that, right? And that doesn't do anybody justice, because if someone saw that quality versus my quality and they associated me with it, that does brand damage to everybody.
So a couple other questions with that. So if you say you came up with your illusion that you wanted to license, that you wanted to let everyone else use, is there like is there like an eBay for illusionists where you can go and it's know that you can license your stuff at a particular place where everyone kind of goes? Or
there's a couple really, really badly designed 1980s style websites that have magicians sell their used props and things. There's a lot of magic distribution sites as well that offer new tricks and ideas that are just basically downloads. It's basically information. Most of the magic that's accessible is with cards and coins and things that people have, and that's very accessible. So it's also super popular, and it's really, a lot of people enjoy seeing magic done close up. And because it's so visceral, it's right in front of you, and it sort of changes the game. And that's why, like in the show, when I produce a show, as we were sort of discussing before we press record, I want to make sure that everybody sees everything. And from the front to the back, they've got to be able to see the show without struggling. And so when I do a card, quote unquote card trick, I want those 3 cards to be 6 feet tall on that screen, so that the person at the back of the room doesn't struggle. And that makes a big difference. Magic is very visual. So as a producer and as the entertainer, I need to make sure that my job that I've worked 18 years for, is visible to everybody.
So would there be, obviously you mentioned different magic shops and stuff you go to. Is there like, I don't know, I keep putting analogies to everything. Is there like the big, Costco for,
Oh yeah.
Is there like a big,
they're online,
the biggest one out there? You just have to go to this particular store, or has everything there that you could ever imagine.
There's a couple, but they'd be warehouses. They'd be like the Amazon is what it is. Literally, I think the biggest magic distributor, this might be bad knowledge, but Murphy's Magic I believe they're in New York. Anyways, if you saw a picture, it's just a giant warehouse, and they're just distributing. This magic industry as a whole represents about 100,000 people. It's a large, and it's not as large as something like wrestling or some of the other very esoteric kind of I don't want to say fantasy, but that kind of genre. There's a big following of an interest group around magic as a whole, and then you have the people that just absolutely hate it. So there is it's either on off.
I think some people can get angry to the fact that they think they're getting tricked.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And
Yeah.
my perspective as an entertainer is not to come on and trick you anyways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, I agree why people would be disturbed and feel challenged by that.
So is there, when you watch other illusionists, or you've seen some of these big illusions they have on TV, is there any of them you watch and you're like, oh, I have no idea how they did that? Or is it always, you pretty well...
Yeah,
I mean,
it's ruined. It's tainted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like you, I'm sure if you hear, like if you're listening to something and you hear a moment that takes out, an error or something, it takes that away from you. You're fully involved in every aspect, not just the what you're seeing. You understand all the little nuances, and then when you see something that happens, it kind of makes you realize that this is no longer just art anymore. This for us. It's like it's so in nature that we pick apart everything, right?
Yeah.
At least I feel so. I can't sit back and really watch magic and be fooled by it. No, it's impossible. A couple times. I mean, there are some things out there that are impossible to distinguish how it's done, but most part, I have some kind of a grasp, or it evolves down to a simple series of similar methods.
Yeah, because you can figure it out. So if you go to see another act, it must be difficult because it's not the same experience. I mean, I guess it's the same for me if I see a music show. I mean, it would be different because I know how everything's being done, but it's nothing, there's not an allusion to, a concert.
Right.
Everyone's just having a good time.
Right.
But I do look at it completely different than,
Right.
if I took a date and they're watching, hey, I love this song. I'm like, hey, look at the lights.
Right.
Right. Yeah. You see that light did over there? Hey, that one's not working. How come it's spinning around?
I know,
there?
right?
Yeah.
You can't sit back and enjoy. I can't anymore. Like even when I go watch major Broadway and everything, like I'm just looking at all of the aspects that are asynchronously happening.
Yeah.
But I love that part. I love to see all the elements. Maybe that's why the producer side of me I enjoy so much. But
this is a great little story. I can't remember what concert it was. I went to see a concert with a girl I was dating. And gosh, I wish I could remember what concert it was. Anyways, I'm always watching everything but the artist, right? And there was something that was going on the stage that I was paying quite a bit of attention to. And so at the end of the concert, we're walking out and she's not talking to me. And I was like, finally, we'll get in a vehicle. And I said, what's going on? We just seen a great concert. And she thought I was staring at this girl that was up a row or two up ahead of us for the whole concert. Because in her mind, I was looking over to the right side of the stage, and that was towards her. And she was really mad. And I was like, I was watching like the lights or whatever it was that's happening on that side of the stage.
Right.
It really caught my attention the whole time. And I was staring at that, watching that. But I was checking out this chick a couple rows up for the whole show. And she didn't speak for me for like days. She couldn't understand, that excuse didn't make any sense.
Oh, that's funny.
For me. I'm like, I'm just watching the guys on stage for Pete's sake.
Yeah, that's so funny. And it's a good anchor to remember how this industry it's a different way of thinking. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that we see like in just sitting down in the theater. There's a lot of things that go on that people don't recognize. Like they just don't. And once you get that curtain pulled away, you know what's going on. You know that the stage manager's calling 5 minutes to curtain, and the audio guys doing the line checks, and this is the lighting guys get the hazer started. Like it's all of that stuff is happening at the same time. And as maybe the entertainer, the artist, it's hard to forget about all of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, looking at other people in your industry doing shows, I'm maybe just throw a couple things out and see what you think. So, David Blaine, are you a fan?
I was one of those resistant ones at the beginning, where I was the David Copperfield fan. I loved all that big stuff and the showmanship and the lights and the smoke. So when David Blaine changed the game completely, at first I wasn't a big fan, but I definitely have huge respect for David Blaine. He's super talented. I'm not the biggest fan of the other guy, Chris Angel, who's since faded away. I've got a couple stories about that I could probably unleash. But David Blaine has really great technique and skill. He's a phenomenal magician. I mean, the guy also sticks needles and stuff through his arms. Like he's intense. I've never met him. I met everybody else but David Blaine.
I think he had a point there where some of his shows were really great, and then he started doing that weird stuff where he'd, you know, I'm gonna be in a tank for like 5 weeks at a time, and not, you know, and it's just like that's just, you know, after a while it's like that's boring, you know.
Yeah.
But I still remember an illusion that stuck with me that he did. He was outside, and I like the fact how he shot things where he, you know, it felt very random, like he was just kind of walking around and stop people somewhere and do his thing. And they're outside his little cafe or something, and he had someone pick a card out of the deck, and he took the deck and threw it against the window, and that person, the card they picked, stuck to the window but on the inside.
Right. Great trick.
And it's like, holy crap.
Right.
And I mean, it was just like, that's, you know, there are certain, you know, because I've done a bunch of shows for years with different musicians, and I've figured a lot of stuff out just by, you know, seeing what they're doing and that type of thing. But there were certain things that just like, you know, that's beyond.
That's a fun example because Copperfield, I mean, that trick is, the essence of that trick is been around forever. And Copperfield did that in an 80s special, but he did it on a moving train. So, I mean, right there, it shows you kind of point blank, two different artists, same visual, but two different takes. And so each method is similar in execution, but I mean, the essence of it is very, very
just
different. The
way you present it. You can take the same illusion and just present it a completely different way, and make it your own. And it's quite amazing. I'm sure there's lots of you know, really old tricks that have been out there that just gets revamped and revamped and revamped and revamped.
Yeah, that's the basis of it. Is always the place I go first is the old books. Yeah, because you're more inclined to not, you know, no one else is probably going to be working on that same thing if you go back in history. But if you're working on the stuff that's just being sold or being released, then everybody's working on that. So I don't know if that applies in the music industry. Would you go back? You probably do. Grab inspiration.
And music has cycles, right? So, you know, what was popular 40 years ago will come back around again. So, and I think what happens is, you know, people do go back and take those sounds and just kind of tweak it a little bit and make it their own, and all of a sudden something becomes, you know, new again. You know, I think country music nowadays is basically reinvented pop music from the 90s. Right. You know, same type of drum loop, same type of everything they were doing back then, but now they've moved that into what country is now, or just everything just kind of invents itself into almost another genre, or you know, but there's only so many chords, there's only so many notes available, and there's only so many ideas you can make with those. So you have to spin it around. And I'm sure it's the same thing in your world. There's only so many.
That's right. You know, 8 principles as a whole. 8. You know, you can make something vanish, appear, you can transposition, change, all the 8 of those. The basic foundation. There's 8 things that you can technically do in the world of magic. Yeah, and it all boils down to those simple principles. It's how you interpret those that make it so creative, and the twist that you make on it. I'm curious to know, what do you think? Do you think in terms of audience perspective do you think there's a resurgence of small events and vaudeville style resurgent happening? What do you think on that?
Could be. I'm not sure if I would say vaudeville exactly.
Of course.
It could lend itself to that. You know, for me, vaudeville was, I almost look at vaudeville like Cirque du Soleil, right? Where you get a bunch of acts that are really good for about 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah, it's such that's true. In fact, when I started in the industry, it was in the time where you had to make a decision: are you an actor or a show? And nowadays, it's just a show. Yeah, it's just a show. You can no longer be an act anymore, I feel. But you're right. There was a time when acts, and it was just, you could have your 5 minutes. You could have 5 minutes.
That's all you had. Yeah. Yeah. And the people built the careers out of, 5, 10, 15 minutes of entertaining. Yeah. And for years, I know with our family, we had an act on called the Paul Brothers and Shirley, and they were they're from the vaudeville days, and they could do 30, 35 minutes if they wanted to, but it was really their main stick was it was two brothers and they would sing, and the one brother's wife would play piano, and their main stick was they'd come out and do this song, and they'd have maybe about 9 different outfits on. And so each song, they would take a layer of clothes off.
Wow.
And it would go down to these little tutus, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and every song was themed on whatever outfit they'd have, baseball outfit. And then all of a sudden they'd be taking the clothes off, and they'd get down, and you can't believe there'd be another outfit, and there'd be another outfit, right? So that was always their stick. And I'm sure in most cases that when they went and did the vaudeville shows, that's the thing they did.
Right.
And, they had a bunch of other, funny kind of novelty songs and that, but really everyone came to see that.
Right.
And I think back in the day that was the thing. You had your bit, and then there'd be, and here's the next little thing, and here's the next little thing. And that was the vaudeville
Right.
Days. Now, to make that happen nowadays would be difficult, because now I think everyone wants to try to do shows and travel or whatever they're doing with the least amount of people as possible.
Yeah, I guess my perspective I should have said like the vaudeville audience, where there was an ongoing resurgence of people that were coming out and supporting live theater on a smaller scale than 3,000 seats.
Yeah, I think people aren't traveling as much as they used to, and there are more people spending more money locally to see stuff. And I think there's just more available than there ever has been before. There's lots of places to go see shows and different things. But it's the same thing as, going to, a strip of highway where there's a lot of restaurants. There's going to be a bunch that are good. There's going to be a bunch that aren't. So whether that helps things, that there's more for people to see. The tough thing now, and I've talked about on the show lots of times, is for the music industry, there's a lot of tribute shows out there.
Sure is.
And I book a lot of them. And there's a few really good ones, and the rest are crap.
Right.
And I hate to say that, but it's just the way it is.
It's true.
And I think it's probably the same thing in the magic world, where you think, because you can buy a trick, you can do a show. And there's a lot of people out there who because they sing, think that if all of a sudden I can now do a tribute to whoever, I've now have a show. But there's a lot of people out there who really don't, I wouldn't say don't have a right. Everyone has a right, but they're just not good enough to present at a theater where people are paying $50 per person to come in.
It's impossible for people to get seasoned nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, the last couple of years have been difficult for people. I don't know how a magician or a musician, maybe it's easier for musicians, but at least for magicians, it's harder to step on stage and work out new material than it used to be. You kind of have to be better right off the gate than I figure I'm up to about 45, almost 5,000 shows. I'm curious how many you'd be up to.
Oh, I have no idea. I never really sat down. I'm probably up there easy.
But the first 1,000 are like, that's where you're sort of carving out who you are. And then you spend the lifetime of finding out the details. And so I can't imagine what it'd be like these days to get the polish, because there's no outlet to perform at this rapid pace that we used to have. But our attendances have been, like, I just finished the tour. Literally, from here, I've got to go. And our truck was stuck in Coburg. That's where we were. So the truck is on its way. I got to go unload gear once I'm finished chatting with you. Yeah. That's but our attendances, almost every show is completely sold out.
That's great.
The reception has been great.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of people doing what you're doing. And like I go through theaters all the time, and I'm looking at their entertainment list, and not only because I want to see what other new acts, I also book acts, so I'm going to see what's new, and possible something might be new.
Right.
So I'm looking through different theater stuff all the time. There's very, very little amount of, magic or illusion shows or anything like that.
Yeah.
Few hypnotist shows, but even that is very slim now. So I think there's a place for it probably, and it's like anything. If you get saturated, and then that's really, I think for a lot of people, you build a name, but unless you're David Copperfield or if you're, any of the big ones, some of the audience are going to know who you are. I've seen you before, but there's going to be a lot that have no idea who you are. So at that point, you say him as almost like a tribute act to some degree. You're only going to be as good or as what the last crappy one they saw, right? So you have to really make sure that, you step up your game so people come and it's like, oh, and then they remember you, right? Because the next time you come through, it's like, he was the really great guy we saw. But the problem is if they go see a bad show,
they question your show.
Yeah, they question, well, do we chance? Yeah, it's, it's whatever price it is, even if it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever it ends up being.
Yep.
Then you're like, oh, yeah, but the last one wasn't very good. And so you're up against that, which is not great for the industry. It's not great for the venue. And I think too, I'm in a different situation with our theater here because we're not a rental house or anything. We just produce our own shows. But we put a lot of effort in making sure the shows we bring in are really great. Mm-hmm. And most theaters out there don't really vet their shows. And I know if I worked at somewhere else, and it was a partially rental house, I think the venue has a say to whether they want to have you as a client of their facility, it's a tough situation because you have to be a rental. You got to be open to everybody, but if they come to see a bad show, it looks bad on everybody. It's not just the entertainer. It looks bad on the venue. It looks bad on wherever they were, the city they went to. I mean, everything about it is a bad experience when it's not a good show.
We've all been there.
Yeah,
we've all seen them.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I think
we promoted our own shows, so we that was that was actually a blessing. That industry is now for me is dead, but we laid out our own schedule. We booked everything. We sold every single ticket that went in there. We, every butt in those seats, we took care of that.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think, the industry is changing, especially theater-wise, all the time. And from the biggest thing I see is that they're just staffed horribly.
Right.
And people don't care. It's a 9-to-5 job for them. Most theaters are subsidized or they're owned by the city and they're given an X amount of budget to use for the year. Our venue, we have a limited budget and we got to make every little piece of it count. So we keep, you count on, the biggest thing we get all the time is no matter what show we come to see, it's great. We hear that all the time. So they'll take a chance.
Right.
And coming to a show if they're unsure because they know that
your name's on it.
Yeah. But most venues don't look at things that way.
Right.
They'll just,
who's put the check in first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues out there with that, but there a lot of theaters very healthy and they're getting lots of good, attendance and.
Do you have a favorite house in Canada? You have on the top of the lists. You've got one that's so close, it's so stunning. The Sanderson Center is just so beautiful.
Yeah, I don't do many shows there besides our family show there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful venue for sure, and I like everybody there. The ones I tour with, probably my all-time. I'm going to be there this weekend's Casino Rama.
Oh, I've never played it, but what a great space.
Yeah, they're really
5,000. Oh, how many does it seat?
Yeah, 5. It's
cool.
great, and the crew's great, and everyone's there is great, and it's a world-class venue. But there's a lot of little venues that are really great. There's a great venue in St. Albert I really like. That's just north end of Edmonton.
I don't think I've played it. We never played.
It's called the Arden. It's a great little spot.
Oh yeah.
I like doing. We do a lot of shows now in Winnipeg at the Casino Club Regent. I like everybody. Most of it has to do with the staff,
Right.
whether I
Sure.
like the people there or not, right? And venue wise comes into play. But for me, it's more of the relationships I have. I'm going to be in Halifax with Rebecca Cohen soon. I really like the crew there. They're super nice. Actually, there isn't really any that are bad. There are some that are way worse than others. But you travel a lot, and it blows my mind. It really does. I mean, I could do a whole 5 podcasts on experiences in theaters.
Oh sure.
But you can. We talked about it before. It's a vibe.
Yeah.
Every venue has a vibe to it, and you can walk and it's probably just like an office building or a 9-to-5 job, or you can go into a restaurant and there's just a vibe there. Everyone seems happy and they're having a good time, and you can go into another place and it's like everyone looks miserable and they don't want to be there. And that's the same thing with venues. And it's that comes from management as far as I'm concerned. It just
Agreed.
Nobody gets along. I think when you get to a venue and everyone helps each other out, and it doesn't seem like there's, there might be a boss, but, there's, I'm not an audio guy and I'm not going to help you move a light or
Right.
any of those strict things that happen in some places. And you just see a divide within the people who work at the venues. And that's really, that's sad.
Yeah, I agree. It makes me glad that I'm not working there.
Yeah, and those are the shows you're glad that you just do one show and get the heck out and move on. The show experience may be great, but you want to have just a great.
Yeah, we get that a lot on cruise ships too. For the most part, the team is usually amazing, and then you walk into one ship and it's just like the worst experience you could imagine. And I've only worked with 3 lines, cruise lines, but one of them, just notoriously in my own mind, is always a step down from the rest of them.
Yeah.
And so that team is what for the artists, because on a cruise ship, I mean, we walk in and we've got like 2 hours to tech, and then it's show for 1, and then an hour later it's show 2, right? It's a revolving door.
Yeah.
And so those people make your life easier or they make it hell, and so.
Yeah. So let's go chat about that. You got into, you do a lot of work on cruise ships.
Yeah.
How'd you land up into doing that? It's just kind of natural progression, or is it?
Yeah, I was trying to get on for the longest time when I was still touring, doing the extensive schedule every year, and I was never able to put in a date. The cruise ships want you to be able to be like, next week, can you fly in and do it? Yeah, it's becoming less like that. But when I was joining, that was what it was. You kind of had to be ready on a whim.
Yeah.
And my schedule was just we had too many events. It was just impossible. So it took me like 5 years to get my first week on a ship, and it went amazing. So I was booked solid after that. But it took a while to get there. And now 2007, I did the most on a ship I've done yet. I did 42 weeks. And
Wow.
I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah. It's almost the whole year.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing because the tour, quote unquote, started down in Australia. So I did Australia and New Zealand, and then Hawaii and the French Polynesians, and then Hawaii, and then the first week of Alaska. I've done Alaska season a bunch, and that's just incredible. Like, there's some amazing visuals on that 6.5 months. I was on the ship straight. That's the longest I've ever been on the ship.
Wow.
It was 6.5 months, and there was a period of time in the French Polynesians, which I mean, I would never have seen that if it wasn't working for the ship. But
Yeah.
what an incredible visuals! But there was a series of 22 days I didn't do a single show.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, I just the way the scheduling works. So we technically I do more than most on a ship because I'm doing a magic show and then a hypnosis show, and I also do like a TED Talk style like speaking event.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm working my face off, but, you know, as a whole, entertainers, we only work about 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to find yourself and the ability to keep yourself entertained in that time. And that's why I got into the vlogging and such intensely, the filmmaking, because it was something to do. And so that was a lot of fun and a challenge. But nowadays I'm trying to get down to maybe 1 or 2 weeks a month, at least for a couple of years, to like try to not travel so much. You know, like this last trip, man, it was just flight, and all of them were canceled.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's you know, for most people, you know, you can listen and it's like, oh, that sounds terrible that you know, and it's like anything, you know, things get old, and you know, being on a cruise ship is great and it's fun.
That's right, and the audience is fun. And it's fun to perform for them. That part is amazing.
The downtime. It's tough, and you can be, you know, in the Caribbean for 5 months, and you're going back to the same port that there's nothing really to see at.
Yep.
And then you just get to the point where you don't even just really even get off the ship because there's no sense. There's nothing there.
That's right.
And you become a bit of a hermit, and
it's true.
And that's the way it is. You know, you go up to the buffet. It's just, you know, it's the same.
Yep.
It doesn't really change much, and it's a, you know, vicious cycle. You know, new people come on and they look just like the old people.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And your sense of anonymity has completely vanished.
Yeah.
And so once your show is done, you are, you know, everywhere you go, you get stopped and people say things, and that's really lovely, you know, most of the time. And then there's days where you just want to be you, not you, the guy that's on stage. So it is definitely. It's got a lot of challenges and a lot of rewards, of course, the travel. I mean, I've seen so much of the world in this industry, in entertainer, but a lot of the, you know, also has been specifically because of ships. But
it was interesting, the ship I just went on, did a vacation last month. They had, it was Holland America, they had a new ship, and they had really inventive as far as their entertainment was going. They had like a BB King's nightclub and another rock room and a piano bar, and then their main theater. But the bands, they're, you know, rocking it out every night.
Yeah.
You know, the odd night they'd have off, but they're playing all the time. And I'm thinking that's what I'd want to do.
3 or 4 sets a day, depending on.
They just, you know, it's a bit like a club. It's like a, you know, 6 night a week club date, and you're on a cruise ship hanging out. You know, I'm sure same thing has disadvantages. You can't just drive to Starbucks in the morning or all those things. But yeah, if I've ever found myself wanted to do any type of gig like that, I want to be working a lot.
To keep sane.
Yeah. But then it's really great for a band to be in that position because you get really good. You're playing every day.
The polish,
Yeah.
You're tight as a group. You would get so tight as a group. Yeah, to be able to work that material consistently. And that is one amazing thing about working these ships is like the teams in general, like for the most part, 90% of the time, the tech teams that you run are phenomenal because they're doing what, you know, we would do on tour. They're doing that every day without a break. For some of these guys work 6-8 months straight.
Yeah.
And so they know that theater in and out.
Yeah.
And so there is an amazing blessing that when you walk on a ship, you are working. In most cases, I say that because, like I mentioned earlier, there's some disasters.
There's some.
Always, you know. Most of the time in the ship industry, the disaster is not necessarily about the team. It's about the quantity of team because it's a turnover rate that's very challenging to fill a lot of times. So you could walk on this last one. I walked on, you know, there are 2 or 3 team members down. And that means everybody's working hard, right? So it's a complicated industry. So
it's interesting for an entertainer like you, because it's, you know, it's whatever night, Thursday night, and Ryan Joyce is on the schedule,
right?
And people coming out because they're on the ship, but people aren't necessarily there and bought a ticket and then necessarily coming,
right?
Because they really want to see that show.
Yep. Which means they can get up and walk out.
Yeah, and because it means nothing to them,
right?
And it's a different audience to play to. But I think it's really great training as well, because you have to be able to learn how to engage those people who don't necessarily want to be there, or maybe they have no idea what they're coming to see.
Yep.
When you buy a hard ticket to go see you,
there's investment.
Yeah, people already have an idea what's going to happen, but I've been on ships where the show starts, and by the time you're 20 minutes in, the place is half empty.
Yeah. Worst I ever had it a couple of years ago with the company brought on a guest entertainer that was a new risk. So they wanted to see how it was. It was an 80s tribute.
Yeah.
And I swear 60% of the audience got up and left. And now here's one of the challenging things that you have to also keep in mind. In the terms of the rating system, that person that just failed miserably brings my average down.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to the cruise director and was like, this person was on 2 weeks. And I was like, I mean, you can do what you want. I'm just going to suggest out there that this person doesn't go on stage again, and you put magic and hypno main stage at 2 nights a week, because the overall ratings we're all going to get a knock in the face for it. And so anyways, they did. And so there's those things that you mean, not that at the end of the day means anything. The company's they know my reputation and everything, but
yeah,
my job's to do the very best that I can. So I offered that as a solution, because sometimes you are faced with that. There is the business back end side of it, as well as just the front performance side.
Yeah, which is, a lot of people don't realize is how much, when you get that comment card at the end of a cruise and you give all the ratings, I think some people think, well, for housekeeping it probably means a lot, or the waiter means a lot, but they don't probably realize that on the entertainment side, especially, that's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
They used to schedule the hypnosis. I say this not as a term of bragging, because the hypnosis show is not about me. It's about the people.
Yeah.
And so everything that's funny that unfolds on the stage is because of them and the situation that arises. But they used to, when the ships were using the physical comment cards, I was exclusive with one particular line for 5 years. They would put me on the day right before, as the stateroom attendants were delivering the comment cards. Oh, yeah. So when people got out of the show on this huge rush, and like the hypnosis show draws a lot of people, and we would always do it as a matinee just to pack it in there. And we'd have days where it was like 200 people they'd have to turn away. It just sets the ship on fire, which is not a good metaphor.
Yeah.
So strategy for the cards, they would go around and put them in. So people walk back to the room in this just total bliss, and they'd fill the comment cards out. Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah.
So obviously, being on the cruise ship, you've probably experienced a lot of crazy things and a lot of bad weather and all that stuff. And what's your worst travel?
Yeah. Okay. This is a fun one. A couple, but the one that I'll point out was totally situational. I was ending probably a 5 or 6 week run on, I believe it was the same ship that you guys were on when we met in Barbados. Mm-hmm. That ship relocated and was about to reposition to do the European run. And so I was following the ship up, and I was going to fly out of Bermuda. My show was the night before Bermuda. Well, there was a huge hurricane come in, and the night that I'm on, I get back on the ship from being out all day, and the cruise director calls me in the office, and he says, well, okay, so here's our situation. We have to cancel Bermuda, and you're one of the only people we know that has 2 specific shows, and we've had to cancel all of our guest entertainers for this 8-day crossing. Could you pretty please, instead of flying home tomorrow, could you stay for 8 days at sea to stay to Lisbon? And obviously we've got to avoid the hurricane and everything, and they were in a real bind. But 8 days at sea is a hell of a long time to be.
Yeah.
So I did it, and thankfully the other group we were with, Redneck Tenors, were just a hoot. I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with them, but they also...
I know who they are.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, they're great. They just phenomenal, and they also had a whole other show. So between the two of us, we main staged and the production show every single night. There was a production shows, and then between that was
Yeah.
the Redneck Tenors and myself. So I main staged 3 nights, and they did 3 nights. Well, 2.5.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's as far as like just total example of kind of the scenarios that you run into for a ship, and it certainly wasn't a disaster by any means, but there's been a lot of little things like that. I remember in Alaska, just the power on the ship just went completely out, and at that point everyone's kind of the passengers are confused, but the team is so prepared for all this. They make it so seamless, but we never know what all happens. I'll ramble on one last little one, because this is probably I won't mention the name of the line on this, but it was happened just recently. I flew into New York City to join this particular ship, and my agent sent me a schedule rechange for my flight, and it was at 7. And I wasn't sure why that was. Why am I flying into 7? Because normally on the ship we have to board and be on by noon.
Yeah.
And I arrive into New York City, and I get the taxi over there, and I'm greeted to what can only be described as total chaos. What had happened is the ship had to do an emergency evac, and so they were late coming in to port. And this is a ship with 5,000 people plus the 1,800 guests. I mean, a passenger or crew. Pardon me. And so, all of those people that flew, all of their flights were canceled, and all of the people that were joining were waiting in the terminal until 1:30 in the morning.
Oh.
We finally got on the ship, and I couldn't believe it. I kid you not, at 2:30 in the morning, after everyone got, they did a boat drill.
Oh, no.
These people were just
right?
livid.
Yeah.
And it was freezing cold in New York. It was just, and none of the scenario was in anybody's control. Of course, if someone needs to be medically evac, you've got to get them out. That's priority. But can you imagine the headache that created for everybody? Those stateroom attendants didn't get 1 ounce of sleep.
No.
These people work so hard. Intense. Those are the kind of oddities that happen. It's never really performance related on ships. It's always the logistics of it.
Yeah.
I know I'm forgetting a dozen of great stories, but
Well, I think any of those type of things, just like touring, everything you have to be able to adapt, and trying to make people happy, and people don't realize what really happens behind the scenes and what really takes to make it all happen. And I know on this last trip, oh man, it was just, I loved it. It was a great ship, one of my favorite ships I've ever been on.
Nice.
But man, some of the people were so rude.
Really?
Passenger wise, I was shocked by how demanding and everything a lot of the people were, and it was embarrassing in some cases. And
wow.
I'd apologize to
The
staff
right?
for someone I have no idea who they are, just trying to make them feel better.
Right.
I'm just like, I guess when you come from the other end, you've been on their end where you're dealing with the public, and they get nasty to you for not knowing a situation at all. Here you could be performing miracles to make something happen, and then someone slams on you, and it's like, oh, that's really hard to take. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's this life is makes you appreciate a lot of other things differently.
Right. I agree with you.
Which is a good thing. You recognize people when they work hard, and
it's true.
It's funny when here at our show, you know for sure the people who understand it, because people come in and certain people just have no idea. They'll come in and say, "Oh, you got someone else is performing here today. You must be great to have the day off." And it's just like, and you just kind of say, yeah, it's great having this day off. Right. I'm working 16 hours, but it's nice to have the day off. But then you get other people come in and they'll make a comment like, "Oh, you guys are really, I know how much work it is what you're doing," you're not looking for that all the time, but the people who understand, and then the people who just have no idea what you do. Just have no idea whatsoever.
Boy. It's so true. And like that was more prevalent for me in the touring days, because we would have people come up after the show. Of course, you do this in meet and greets and things, and also magicians would come up, and they would just like no concept that every single person there in that venue was like responsible of me, and we had 2 business partners, right? Like they just think you just send the theater a little package and they say, yes, come on in. We'd love to have you on December 13th, and they have no idea about all of that every single one of those 800 seats we sold, all that souvenir program, we filled it with local businesses. We were the ones that connected and communicated and arranged and produced. And it's so much work. And it's a good thing people don't really realize, because
Yeah.
there's so much of it that it makes it look more magical, and they don't have any idea how much goes behind the scenes. At least in my industry, it's nice when they don't understand how much work goes into it.
So for you, as a magician, is there certain things out there you look and say, yeah, I really would like to do this, or not really particularly a venue or anything, but as far as magic, is there a certain magic trick that you've been thinking, I really want to, do this extravagant thing, or whatever it could be? Do you have a list of things that you...
Too many, because like I write down and journal ideas all the time, and I've had different systems over the years. I'm curious to know what you use for your ideas and organizing. Mine now is digital, but I document every major idea that sort of withstands more than a couple days of interest. How you come up with an idea and then it just sort of phases, and if it percolates and it's good enough, I'll keep it and work on it. My problem is adding it to the show. The hard part, especially now, is you walk on a ship or you walk in a theater and you've got to deliver your product. And so it's really hard, at least me. I'm very self-conscious about adding things that aren't up to what I would classify as my level.
Yeah.
So, and that's anything that's new. You just can't do something new and it'd be incredible the first time. It's impossible. You have to do it. I always said in the touring days, because we produced a new show every year like that. So I did a lot of material. It would take 3 days to get to good and a lifetime to get to great. But that first 3 days is hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're doing as far as beginning, middle, end. You've thought it through, but until it's been in front of an audience, you don't know where the dead times are. You don't know where they respond. You don't know how they're going to respond. Until you figure those out, there's a lack of confidence thing that just is. Until that confidence is there, it's the structural support for everything. And new material, there is no confidence. At least for me. Yeah. I don't know about you. What do you?
No, I think it's the same thing. Like you could say, if I was going to go on tour or starting a new show, you can practice forever. You can run the band forever, but until you get on stage in front of the audience, that's when the real practice starts.
Yeah.
You could be prepared, but it takes. I know even for us here at our theater, we'll do a 2-week run. We'll be well prepared, and would have played, multiple times to get ready. But the difference between when you start practicing and when you start a show, and then when you start a show and end a show, the difference between when you start a show and end a show, that's the biggest gain.
Yeah.
Because that's where you really tweak everything. Because like you said, you don't know how the audience is going to react. All that timing thing. And, that's why you see, the comedians nowadays, they go into little clubs and they just work their act.
Yep.
They have a spot to go and figure it all out, and they change it. And until they go on tour, they've run that show in front of an audience,
thousands of times.
Yeah, just a bunch of times. And it's hard, as, someone that does what you do or does what I do, there's not really anywhere. Where do you go to rehearse a show in front of an audience?
Right.
There's not really any place to go. You have to just kind of...
You need that stage time, flight time, as they would, you need that 10,000 hours.
We do, our Christmas show every year at the Sanderson Center, and, we just do it as a one-off, and we do a couple shows in the day, and that's our Christmas thing. But that's tough. It's really hard. I mean, you're in early, you're setting up, you get everything going, you do a little sound check, bam, you're doing a Christmas show.
Yep.
And it's like, wow, where did this come from? And you have nothing to base it on besides what you did a year before, because you haven't played those tunes, and you haven't been running. I mean, you rehearse a bit, but it's not as if you've done a week of shows and then you just bam and it's done, and you just fly by the seat of your pants. And so the only thing you can go on is your experience and your where you are as being a professional and the amount of years and then what have you experienced before. If something happens, you have to figure out a way of getting out of it.
Yeah.
And just making it work. And I guess it's the same with, doing what you do. It's all entertainment, and it's just getting the flow right and getting everything right. It's a big
true.
deal.
And it's a team too. And that's the nice thing about touring. I mean, is like when we did New Zealand, that was 3 shows a day, pretty much every day for 3. And even in Canada, that's what we were doing a lot of that towards the end as well. And like you get to show 2 and you're like, what show is this? But there's that, like, you can't remember, did I deliver this line? Did I say that joke? But it's that kind of consistency that makes the team work so well. And it's hard to even explain to people what that team element is like when you're in a production. But when everything is happening and everyone's in some kind of a sync, I imagine it's like music. I mean, I don't have any musical talent whatsoever. Like I have total respect for everything that you do, because I look at it and I feel like you see musicians and you can tell they're in a zone together.
Yeah.
Whereas magicians, you don't. It's always just the one. You don't usually see, or the 2, an assistant or whatnot. But in the touring world, there's actually, like, we had 7 people on the road, and all of those people were in tune completely with the show. And that's a feeling that it's a great feeling when you've got that relationship with your team. But that's all gone now. I live by a suitcase,
Yeah. So when you go on a ship now, you're able to just you walk on. Because I know you used to carry props and a bunch of stuff, but you don't do that as much now, right?
Yeah, last year my stuff was lost for about 8 months, so it didn't, from a ship, I didn't get it back it was after the Australia thing, I didn't get it back at all for 8 months, and so...
where was it?
No idea. And the worst part of it was my grandparents, my grandfather, 92 and 90, my grandmother's 90, and they used to live 2 doors down from me, and so which was really convenient, because when my gear would come or leave or whatnot and I was all on the road or on a ship, they would sign for it, but they signed for my gear returning, and I didn't realize that one prop was missing in the lot, so I lost about $6,000. Magic's not cheap.
No.
When I'm flying the stuff out, when I fly the show to the ship, it's about $50,000 worth of equipment. Like it's an expensive game. And nowadays, so since that occurrence, I haven't been so keen to ship stuff around the world. And so I've been mainly doing the fly on, just me, a suitcase and a backpack, which is convenient.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I'm digging it.
Yeah.
But when we did Fool Us, though, we did a piece of magic that was like, the prop was so big, it's 18 feet tall, and it was so big the producers of the show were trying to get that same prop in Vegas, in all places. Thankfully, they found one in Vegas because they didn't want to fly this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it was about 1,000 pounds. Like the illusion is massive. And sure enough, they located one in Vegas, but that in itself, it was just a whole different nightmare, because that prop was very, very different from our version, and there was only 6 of them, I think, available out there. And go on YouTube. Ryan Joyce Magic is my handle, and you can see the Fool Us episode. We were in season 3, and you'll see, if you watch closely after you watch it the first time, you'll see. I'll point out one of the little things, mishaps that happen. The illusion is basically, I call it a giant hamster wheel. It looks like a big circle, and then we put a piece of basically paper in half of the circle, so you could have someone behind that paper, and it's like a silhouette. So we had this girl basically vanish into this thing. You'll watch it and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this structure was 18 feet tall, and we needed a piece of paper that was 4 feet wide by about 8 feet tall, and it was crucial for this performance. Well, the guy they rented from only gave us enough for 2 performances.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're in rehearsal, and we didn't run it with the big moment. You'll see when you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But we were doing this first taping, and your heart's racing. Penn and Teller are right in front of you, and Alison Hannigan is right there, right? And the music starts, and this illusion is very technical, and immediately there was a technical issue about a minute into it. So we had to stop, and the voice of God comes on, and he's like, all right, we're going to take that again from the top, and then your heart's racing. I'm dripping with sweat at this point. So we tape it again. And this time, just based on the scenario, the paper just shreds. And it was the only one we had left because we used one for rehearsal, which they taped, thankfully. And we had no option. So they went backstage and they just scotch taped this thing. And it's, a big piece of paper, the thing that I'm on national television show for.
Yeah.
And they're taping it with scotch tape before the show. And I have no idea if that's going to impact the magic moment that's about to happen. So I never once sat in a moment of pure confidence in that whole taping.
Oh, yeah.
And, and it worked and it was fine. The third taping was, but I mean, I was just dripping with sweat.
Yeah.
And so that ends, and then there's about 10 minutes of online or banter, with Penn and Teller and Allison Hannigan, where they chop all that down into a short amount of time, and then Penn and Teller come up and they show you what they think is the method for the piece that you just did. And Teller hands me his drawing that he put on a piece of paper, which would be a really lovely souvenir. If you were a magician, you'd love that little piece of paper that Teller drew.
Yeah.
But I was so frazzled that as he's talking, I folded it up. I wasn't even thinking. I folded it up and I walked off stage and threw it in the garbage, not even thinking that in my hands was this paper with Penn and Teller's, the only souvenir I was going to get. It ended up in a trash can, but I snuck down about 4 hours later, and sure enough, in the garbage can was that piece of paper. Cool. So I ended up with it, and it's folded and creased. So it's a bit of a better story, but there's that moment of pure panic. I was like, "What did I do?
Yeah,
what did I do?" But yeah, what an experience! My only time playing Vegas. Have you played Vegas?
Really lightly. Years ago, popped in, played with a couple of friends that were performing back in the day when they're lots of bands playing everywhere, but haven't I go quite a bit, and I've seen all the shows, and I was thinking when you said things come to a halt in the show like that, I remember seeing Siegfried and Roy, and when I went to see him, it was about 20 minutes into the show. I was like, and it's like, all right. Same thing. Voice of God came on. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a small technical issue. We'll be taking a little break. We'll be starting the show again. And
then all you hear is a tiger on the microphone.
I know. Help. And then, sure enough, it's like 10 minutes goes by, and then it's like almost like being on a ride at Disneyland that stops, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, away we go again, and it just kept going. But there were so many things technically going on in that show.
Did they start it again?
Yep.
They did.
Yeah, it just picked up basically almost right where they were.
Oh my.
I think it was one of the machines, or they had some, they had such big...
It was all automated.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I think just something, either they had to reboot a computer or whatever it was, that something, this is, right. Unless they get that fixed, it's probably hard for them to jump to the next thing, or it probably happens a lot. Because that's quite a while ago.
That reminds me, totally out of left field, this story, but I would have to classify this as the worst thing that's ever happened to me on stage, ever. And it was when you said like 10 minutes into the show, the first thing I thought of is like a 10-minute break. Can you imagine as an entertainer having to like get the audience back on your side after 10 minutes? Brutal. And that's what made me think of this. I was in Thunder Bay doing the hypnosis show, and the hypnosis show is a formula. You bring 30 people on stage, you do an induction, and then you do about 2 hours of entertainment. Well, the most boring part of that is the induction, the part that quote unquote puts people into a hypnotic trance. And then I'm about 5 minutes into the fun part of the show. I just did this induction, and everyone's under, and I give a direction for the person at center stage. And as soon as I do, that person she goes into an epileptic seizure right in front of a full theater, and like stop the show, ambulance, taken out. But this isn't like a thing that I can stop and abandon. Yeah. We sold all these tickets. I haven't even started a show, so I've got to turn around and do the whole thing again. Oh. I've got to get 30 people back up on stage and do, like, it was an absolute. I mean, we made it work, but like the worst case scenario you can imagine: epileptic seizure, right on stage.
Oh, that's awful.
Ambulance, stop the. Oh, it was a 20-minute like ordeal, and then let's do this again.
Yeah, that's a tough one to come back. It's
brutal.
If you can just go up and play some songs and crank it
brutal.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's not fun at all. Oof.
And then to be the kicker of it, I had it happen. I was in Colorado doing a show down in Colorado and had it happen at the same thing, but this time there was somebody in the audience. It's not hypnosis related, by the way, if anyone is wondering that in the view or the listening audience. It's not that. It's just circumstance, which is totally random.
Have you ever had a show where you couldn't get like
People?
Well, you ended up. I was doing a show, a corporate show, in Toronto, and we're doing shows there, and I was doing production there, and the hypnotist there, they had a bunch of people. He couldn't get anyone under. He had no show. It was basically, but luckily it wasn't like in a theater. It was more in a corporate kind of trade show, which is probably a bit of the problem. There was lots of stuff going around all over the place, and he didn't have 30 people up. Maybe he had 8 to 10.
8 to 10, yeah.
And then he was done. That was the end of the show. Wrap it up.
Yeah, that's
you could try. He was trying. You could tell that he was just trying to think of what can I do to fill time. And
there was only one time I've ever had an experience where I thought like I'm not going to do this again, and that was actually up in Timmins. And I would put it more as a language barrier because in that particular venue it was a French university or a French college, and so I was assured it was. English obviously is the prolific language, but French is very dominant up in Timmins. So, it was a language barrier. If someone has to convert in their head a statement, that's the exact opposite of what we want in hypnosis or mindfulness and meditation. You don't want people to think. It takes them out of the alpha brainwave state. So that was a big part of it for me, is that if they're translating, it's not going to be a successful show. And man, I did 45 minutes and I got the check and I got out of there as fast as I could go. My God. And I got to the hotel and I just, you just think to yourself, like, when you do a bad show, it keeps with you for days.
I assume when you're doing the hypnotist stuff, that's harder than the magic stuff in a way where people really think a lot of time that's all put on.
Right. Yeah, it's a different game for sure, and it was way more stressful in the earlier days. But now that I've done it so much, it's certainly it's gotten pretty formulaic, I suppose.
Can you tell when people are coming up on stage? Who's before you even talk to them, who's going to be good and who's going to be bad, or who's not going to be able to
who's going to go under and who's not. I can't answer that affirmatively, but I make guesses. When I bring people up on stage, I'm trying to reposition the people that I think are best. I want them in the center. So I'm moving people around that I think intuitively are going to be the better and the most animated, but. That's a guessing game.
Yeah.
I would say, I've got a pretty good success rate with it, but then sometimes I'll look over and the most animated person is on the end. I moved them there, but my goal is to eliminate the people that are definitely faking it, because I have a legitimacy problem, and if I can do everything I can to make it as legitimate as possible, then I've done my job. So I'm anybody that's faking it or obvious that they're faking it, I definitely get rid of them. But it's a short show. Like on the ship, I'm supposed to do 45 minutes. I walk in and immediately tell them that 45 minutes is not going to happen. Yeah. If they want a show that's going to set the ship on fire, again, bad metaphor. But if they want a really great event, then I need an hour and 15. Yeah, and they'll give it to me knowing. But the touring show is at least 2 hours. 2 hours, and it's fun because the hypnosis skits, I guess you would call it, continue through the intermission. And that's really fun because you get to get people, that are just participants, just there to watch. They're now like heavily involved and get to see it first. Oh, it's just a fun experience.
And it must be great because it's a different show for you
It's a microphone. That's what I love. It's a microphone. That's all I got to take and my computer. But there's a lot of, that's right. There's a lot of variability. Even the show is completely scripted. It is, it's very, very, very scripted. It all boils down to the people. So it changes from day to day, person to person.
I know people bringing, I've had to bring people up on stage plenty of time for different whatever in our shows and that. Yeah. And, I learned that the funny guy in the audience is not the guy you want to bring up, right? Because they go pretty stiff they like dishing it out,
Right.
but
If
they
they're not
don't.
in control, they'll either shut down or they'll try to shut you down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and either one of those is not a good situation.
That's right.
So yeah, I always used to spend, when I used to do that a lot, I used to spend quite a bit of my time, the first few songs of the show, just looking at the audience and figure out who I'm going to get.
Right.
And seeing,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. Absolutely. I'm always peeking through the curtain, and it's not because I want to see how many people are there. I want to eliminate that time where I'm searching for the right person. I want to walk down the stairs and go, you and you,
yeah,
which is super crucial.
yeah. So we'll wrap things up here in a couple minutes. A couple questions. I've always been asking lately. Do you have a particular venue or place that you haven't performed at that it's on your bucket list?
Yeah, I really, really want to get up into the territories. I've always talked about that because I don't know. You've probably played Fort Mac a ton, right? Fort McMurray, have you?
A couple times. Yeah, maybe 4 times.
Yeah, we used to go 4 times a year. I was producing 4 shows, so it was a magic show, hypnosis show, a tribute show, and then a variety show. So we would hit Fort Mac 4 times a year, and there was just something special about it because it was in the middle of nowhere. People would just flock out and enjoy it. I always felt that was going to be Whitehorse and Yellowknife, and the territories. I'd love to say that I've performed in them all. As far as I would put that at the top of my interest list. It's not I feel like I've been lucky enough to see and do a lot. I've been to Asia and China and Egypt and all over North America. There's not probably a place I haven't at least stepped onto in North America. So my big goals, I feel really happy with the career. It's the Canadian aspect I really love. I love being home. I've turned the vibrancy on Canada way up because I'm always so far away from it. I feel that I'm so drawn to our beautiful country that I'd say those places.
Well, I think for especially people who live in Ontario, where we do have such a large opportunity to go everywhere but to Canada.
Yeah.
Because usually if you're going to go west, you end up going to Vancouver or BC or Alberta.
Yeah.
I know most people skip over Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
Right. Thompson, Manitoba, man.
Oh yeah, I've been there too.
Letkeman Theater.
But people just don't tend to travel Canada as much, and they should. There's lots of awesome places to see.
So true.
And it's really easy for us just to, and probably in some ways cheaper for us to just grab a flight to Florida and
right,
and do that type of thing, or Caribbean, and then
right,
and that's
flying to Calgary and spend 2 weeks just circling around Alberta and BC.
Yeah,
it'll change your life. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. So where do you have a 10-year goal for Ryan Joyce?
Yeah, I've been trying to produce TV actually lately. A magician with the imagination as a filmmaker is my quote unquote slogan. So there's a filmmaking side of this that I really enjoy. My goal long term, I suppose, would be to try to get something produced that's not just YouTube.
Yeah.
We filmed a show last year. I did a taping in Fergus, Ontario. I mentioned his hometown, and it's about an hour outside of Toronto. It's a very touristy town that's built around this, the gorge. It's a very beautiful area, and it's a very artistic area. We have it's flocked incredible artists from all over the world because it's so beautiful. And last year, I took a kind of a gamble, and I essentially rented the theater. I brought 4 internationally acclaimed magicians and variety artists to this theater, and we brought Mike Bullard as well to come host.
Yeah.
And we did 3 live tapings at the theater, and the result of that was a sizzle reel that I'm trying to get out there. And the essence of the show is it's Wonder Town. It's the most magical town in the world. How these incredible world acclaimed artists end up in this small 255 little theater in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge learning curve in that process. Like I every part of that we produced and filmed all HD, all ready to go. But what a different industry this is that I'm starting to slowly learn.
Yeah.
I'm really community driven as well. So the little hook that we did to fill the theater was the show was free, but people had to buy dinner locally, and their dinner ticket became their show ticket. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so the tourism board was there with us for this event, and they actually collected all the receipts. And so we know that over these 3 tapings, we generated over $10,000 of revenue just for our restaurants.
Wow.
So my goal is to be able to do tapings like that on a more regular basis. That's kind of the effort. So I've been full steam ahead in that industry, trying to capture an audience, to support that. It's going to be a long journey. I know that. I'm not blind to the road ahead, but I view it as a nice, fun challenge because I enjoy the work immensely.
Yeah, sounds really great.
Thanks.
So, what's the best place for people to find out more about Ryan Joyce's work? What direction do you head them to?
Yeah, ryanjoyce.com. And I'm on all the social media, of course. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook are all Ryan Joyce Magic. The filming is fergusfilming.ca. That's where people can learn about the show. In fact, they can see the sizzle reel if they want. We got it online, but you have to log in. We're not going to spam you or anything, but we just can't show that to the public. So really proud of how it turned out. I'll show it to you after, actually.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending a bunch of time here, and it's a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled.
We'll see you in a ship somewhere, maybe.
That's great. I look forward to it.
Thanks.